sign to reset? Stay at the bottom of the stairs. So I'll sign to if this can reset. I want to be able to bloodlust that guy. Nope. Reset. 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 He's still alive! What? Like, there's no reason we can't cleave these. Oh, yeah, there is. Oh, shit. My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I take it all back. Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher and Taurus the Burning Throne. Sorry I've not been around for a week or so. There are good reasons for it, don't worry. There's nothing weird going on, but I'm not going to blabber on right now about that. It's not the point of this video. Taurus has launched. I was going to make the video this afternoon after we finished and cleared the normal mode. Obviously, it launches a day later in the EU, for those of you who don't know that. So we finished it, we got it today, and we cleared it, and I've just finished my heroic raid. But I decided to delay making the video because I was very mixed. Very mixed. As raiding is the thing I enjoy the most, I came out of the normal raid with a very... I don't know about this one. There's something not sitting well with me, and usually new bosses, new tactics, new mechanics, things to learn is super exciting to me. But when we finished Argus the Unmaker and had that wonderful RP, good God, that's beautiful. That RP that comes after defeating Argus, I'm sure many of you who are not in the raiding scene might have watched the scenes on MMO Champion. I didn't. So I should be clear about something here. I do things in a unique way compared to a lot of people who are in a similar sort of position to me, even members of my own guild, is that I actively avoid anything to do with the bosses at all until they hit live servers. I don't watch any videos, I don't read the dungeon journal until I've pulled the boss at least once. I did know what the bosses' names were because we saw it on the PTR, and I don't raid the PTR, I just want to be clear here. We saw it in the dungeon journal when people were asking me to show off the new armor sets and things like that. So I did know the names of the bosses, but what they do, what happens there, I had no idea. I don't know what Agramar did. I didn't know what Ionar did. I didn't know what the first boss did in any way, shape, or form. So the first thing we do is we have what we call the science raid, which is a viewer raid with pugs who are very aware of the situation. Like, look, I'm going to lead the raid. I don't know what happens. I can't vouch for you guys, but no spoilers. We don't want spoilers here. We want to learn, and I try to teach people this is the most fun thing you can do, I think so, is walk into a boss, see it for the first time, pull it, and just figure out what it's doing. And doing that is much better than just reading the dungeon journal for me. I think it makes you a much better player in general because you're like, oh, okay, I see how these things are linking together, and that sticks with you far better than reading like a bunch of text, right? It's always like doing is better than trying to research it and then apply the theory after the fact. I prefer that way. Other people prefer to, you know, watch a video, watch the Fat Boss Guy, something like that, and get a full rundown of the boss before they ever see it. That's how I do it. So today, all I'm trying to say here is that today was the very first time I found out and learned about Antorus. So, what are my mixed feelings though? Why was it after normal? I walked away with less excitement than I thought, or that I traditionally have when entering a new raid, because I love raiding. I absolutely adore it. And I walked away going, I don't know about this one. I don't know about this one. And it took me a few hours to really wrap my head around why I wasn't feeling that excitement. And I wanted to wait until we did heroic, so I got another run in there with more abilities, more, you know, more interesting things going on, and see how I felt then. But I think it's pretty fair. I think I've nailed what it was. Firstly, and many of you might agree with me here, but I'd love to see your thoughts on it, is really tired of the Legion theme, which seems ridiculous because this is the Legion expansion. Of course, the last raid was going to be Legion themed, but the last 4 pieces of extra content we've had have all been that theme. Now, it makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being a moron here. Well, it's Legion Preach. Yeah, I know, but it still doesn't mean it's not worn a bit thin on me. So if we look at it since the Nighthold came, we had the Broken Shore, okay, and then we got Tomb of Sargeras, of course, and then we got Argus, and now we have Antorus, and they're all very thematically similar. Along all the content we've had over sort of the last 8-9 months has all been very, very similar thematically, which it kind of should be in terms of the Legion expansion. But having said that, I mean, let's compare it to past expansions where we might have a troll thing thrown in, right? Or even the raid itself. If we look at something like Karazhan, we never expected the dream that we got, which was Karazhan, which took us to all different kinds of crazy areas. Very creative, very interesting. And I would say, and I think this is a fair shout, is Antorus is visually got some very spectacular areas, but in terms of variety and uniqueness, it's less than Tomb of Sargeras. If you think about Tomb of Sargeras, we go into that wonderful hallway. There's Legion-themed and Fel areas, but we also go into the Druidic areas, which have the, you know, all the sparkles and all the flashes and all that kind of stuff. And then we move through to deep into the underground, and then end up on a spaceship. There's a huge amount of variety in terms of room designs and layouts and things like that, whereas Antorus is just, you know, it's Legion through and through. Besides Ionar's area, which I know that I can speak for Nobble here, because Nobble came along to film his lore stuff in our raid. Is talking to him afterwards, he was like, walking into Ionar's area, I was like, oh god, thank you. A bit of green that's not Fel green, something a bit of lush, a bit of nice. This is a nice contrast to every other area of the instance. And I just want to be clear here, it's not that there aren't very visually spectacular areas. Going up to the Burning Throne particularly was gorgeous. Agramar's area with all the red was lovely, and certainly Argus's room with all the Titans was fantastic. And there's no taking away from the lovely and absolutely tremendous RP stuff, the lore stuff that comes out at the end of the raid, which I won't spoil here, but that stuff is available on MMO Champion, even if you're not into raiding or anything like that, so many of you will probably be aware of it. All that was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, but the overall theme I found uninteresting. Despite it being gorgeous, but so was Argus, right? I mean, we saw when you go to Argus for the first time, you see Azeroth up in the sky. It's like, whoa! And that stuff kind of carries on through Antorus, and it's like, I've seen this for the last little while now. I've had this kind of look for months now. And there's no real new models in there that I noticed in particular that there aren't on Argus. The bosses, there's no boss that I don't think visually made me go, oh my god, like that we've had in the past, right? Nighthold style, like going to Chromatic Anomaly is only a void thing, but you go into that room with that giant thing, you're like, oh my god, that's pretty goddamn cool. And you have the same with Trilliax, and you have the same with Croesus and all these kind of things. There were no bosses in Antorus that made me go, ooh, that's cool. I think back to, and actually the raid very much reminded me of Hellfire Citadel. I know some other people agreed with me there, is that it feels like Hellfire Citadel, the layout, the constant dead ends, which we'll get to in a minute, and then backtracking, moving around the dungeon, and then eventually just using portals to get to the bigger areas. It definitely felt to me like Hellfire Citadel. So that was kind of a black mark, is visually, it looks great, but the style and the theme is what I've seen for a long time now, and that kind of didn't excite me in the way I wanted it to excite me. And I wonder how many other people felt the same way. On top of that, it's really long. It's really quite long in comparison to Tomb of Sargeras. Tomb of Sargeras is a relatively compact raid when you think about it. You do just a couple of trash packs between bosses each time. If you think about moving through there, Goroth has, what, 3 Infernals? You're into a boss. There's essentially 1 trash pack and an ad before you're doing Demonic Inquisition. And there's a little bit of trash before you're doing Hajatan, and then there's a couple of trash packs, and then you're on to Mistress, or you're on to the Sisters. There's then a bit lengthy piece of trash, but then you're on Desolate Host, and then Maiden has 2 trash packs in her room, and then you're fighting the Maiden. There's only 2 enemies between Maiden and Fallen Avatar, and then of course you're up to Kil'jaeden. With some of the lengthiest trash in the dungeon actually is Kil'jaeden's ship, which is kind of interesting because that's not very long either. You're talking 3 or 4 minutes to clear through that. Whereas Antorus, there's a lot of trash in there. There is. I think that's fair to say. There's a lot of trash. Probably like double, if not triple in some areas, the trash we're used to in Tomb of Sargeras. And that's definitely hit me. It was like, oh, feels long. It feels very long. Talking from normal and I would say heroic now, having done it, I also think the first 2/3, it takes a long time before the dungeon actually gets going in terms of interesting bosses, which I was a little shocked by. So we can work through the bosses a little bit, but I would think it's fair to say that it's up till about Portal Keeper that things really get going, which is like boss number 4. And then you've got a couple of kind of interesting bosses, and then it really ramps up. So the first, say, 40 minutes an hour is dealing with trash and bosses that aren't doing too much, that are grabbing you by the balls and really saying, all right, now we're doing something cool, until it ramps up. I would also point out, and many people are commenting this on the forums, I checked the forums as well, that the ramp up in difficulty, certainly when you meet around about Veramathras and, of course, the Coven of Shavara, is enormous. Compared to what's before it, there's this giant leap in not only mechanics, but interest. And I think Kingaroth, can also be mixed into there. It's like around that time, there seems to be a huge jump in what's going on. So let me work through the bosses then. Garothi Worldbreaker kind of feels like a trash mob with its a boss. A little bit. It's at least on normal and heroic. It obviously depends on your guild. I'm not taking it. I have to preface this by saying, like, if your guild struggles here, that's fair enough. I'm just talking like the normal we did in a full pug. No, it wasn't like a Zac pug or a Tally pug or something where there's like very high level people in there. We took people from the stream. It was anywhere between 925 to about 940, but it wasn't based on item level at all. We just took people who are recognized from the stream for the first one. And again, we went in with no knowledge at all. Grothy Worldbreaker. Hard to comment on this boss in terms of what it's doing. Even on heroic, it was just kind of fell over, and that was it. It wasn't interesting. I mean, it's kind of like a Zerg boss, I guess. I mean, maybe people will be pushing it for logs or something like that, but wait till Mythic to see something interesting there. Similar with the Fellhounds of Sargeras, just irritating. I found, at least there's a range. I don't know if they arranged it with me. I found the Fellhounds on... I tanked the first run. I should point that out here. I tanked the first run, and then I was on my mage for heroic. At least on my mage, the Sucking Shadow Orb, I think someone in our raid actually said it correctly, which is like, this is the worst spell in the game. This is the worst boss ability ever because it's just so annoying. It just sucks you in and you're just like, ugh, get off me. Get away from me. But the Fellhounds, then they just kind of fall over. The Antoran High Command is a fight that I think is totally nullified by people, by like 3 people. And there's a few bosses like that in the history of WoW. It's like if 3 people kind of know what they're doing, that's it. And that's about it. And like, so if you've got a couple of people who know what to do in the pods and you have a guy who knows how to click the shield crystals correctly, then the fight kind of just plays out itself. There's only a bit of a tank swap situation and don't stand in a mine. That's it for everybody else who's just DPSing away and killing some ads. Other than that, those 3 or 4 people can just carry that entire fight and make sure that nobody's going to die as long as they're awake at their keyboard. At least it feels that way to me. Maybe you guys struggled with it. I mean, we almost wiped on normal, but that's because we scienced whether you could use, say, a bubbling paladin or a cloaked rogue to blow up a load of mines. Don't do that, by the way. Yeah, it's a really bad idea. Yeah, don't do that. I killed a lot of people. Portal Keeper Hasbel was what really started to stand out as something interesting. Really liked this. Really like the idea of teams going off and doing other things. I have yet to do this fight stood on the platform. As my tank, I went off and did the portals and tanked the ad, and on my mage, I was going off and picking up the flame orbs and stuff. But I really like the idea of going to one platform, picking things up, bringing it back, getting it ready for later in the fight, then taking that through and making something else happen. I don't know what happens in Mythic. I don't want to know, but I'm hoping there's more going on there, which involves like getting stuff from each platform, swapping it around, and doing all kinds of cool things. I found that very exciting. It might be though, and you guys can let me know, like if you're DPSing, that being on the platform is actually way less interesting. Then we get to the really interesting one, which I'm sure is dividing a lot of people, which was ENR the Lifebinder. So as you can imagine, going in with no knowledge, ENR was a wake-up call. First of all, very excited, as I said earlier, to go into ENR's area. Like, going in there, I was like, oh, this is better. This is what I'm after. There's something a bit different, a little bit of variety. Very cool. And then the fight happened, and I was like, this is one of the worst boss fights I've ever seen in my life. From my perspective, it was terrible. Half the raid didn't know what they were doing. We were just kind of following people. Where's their enemies? Jump over there. Kill them. Where's the next enemies? Can't see any. Hang about for a minute. Oh, there's some over there. Let's go over there. And then randomly, without any of us really knowing what was happening, the fight ended. It just went, okay, you've won. And we were all like, I don't know what's happening here. After doing it on Heroic, same feeling, actually. A little bit more coordination, which was like, we need to split the raid at some point. I think that was about as coordinated as actually got, which is, okay, later in the fight, half of you will go over there and half of you will come over here. and then we'll carry on doing it. And also the same thing happened again. I can't tell you right now. I've done the fight on normal and heroic. I don't know what finishes the fight. I have no idea. I really don't know. And I imagine there's a lot of other people who are in the same boat. It's just at some point, the fight ends. And you're like, okay, great. We won the fight, right? We won the fight. So ENR seems like it might have been good on paper. I don't think that's paid off. I've seen a lot of people calling it loot ship and whatnot. I think that's relatively fair for normal and heroic. Maybe it's tuned around mythic. That could be the case, but certainly normal and heroic, I think they've missed the mark with what they are planning to do with ENR. And I think maybe it could be a Deathwing situation where on paper it was a good idea. If they were going to go with the full tower defense thing, I don't think people would have minded if there was something along the lines of people actually constructing things and building blockades and things like that to organize it a bit better. Even a simple version on normal where you could build some towers to buff you or something like that. I think that if they were going to do it, instead of half-arsing it and just being kind of like it's just mobs coming out of a certain door, if they actually went ahead and allowed some construction. We know that stuff's coming in Battle for Azeroth, so maybe they could have gone a bit further with it and then pulled off something really special. As it stands now, it feels like training dummies that are just marching around the room, and you're like, okay, let's kill these. So yeah, that was the worst. I'm placing ENR as the worst boss so far. I thought that fight was absolutely garbage and boring on both normal and heroic. Iminar, the Soul Hunter. So this is the bridge boss, for those of you who are not sure of the names yet. He's okay. He's okay. It's all about the bridge. Like, everything else was non-existent, at least on heroic. Like, every other mechanic was barely a thing. Like, as long as you could move a few yards, which anybody doing heroic can probably do, then it was just about dealing with the bridge. I really don't like that aspect of it. It's just like the one difficulty is dealing with this one momentary part of the fight that you have to do twice, which is just running across a bridge and trying to avoid things, and people just kind of, who can, just mopping things up in front of you. That was it. I didn't feel it was special or interesting. It was just kind of like, all right, okay. Moving on. Kingaroth, though, this is where it got fun. I liked this. I really liked this. I mean, you compare it to a similar setup of boss like a Mercius. Oh, so much better. Really like the idea of how intense it is. You've got an I-beam going on, giant robots moving around. There's some plus damage things to take care of if you want to do some padding. There's all kinds of balls rolling around. They mixed so much stuff in there, but didn't make it too complicated or hard on normal or heroic, which I found really fun. I like the way they had some predictability to it, so it wasn't RNG where the ads would spawn. I think that could get really frustrating with such a large room. They made it so it's very predictable where to be, and also how to deal with things, so you got to pick and choose which robots you wanted, which ones you're going to destroy first, all that kind of stuff. Really like Kingaroth, and that fun of the laser beam of death. It's an old, tired mechanic. We've seen it for a long time now. I mean, since vanilla. I mean, Cthulhu had the laser eye beam of death, but it's still fun. It's still fun. I like it. I like seeing... there's something very special about seeing a lot of people mess it up and then suddenly being fried to the ground. And always having this constant threat looming of a mechanic that's so easy. I mean, his cannon is so huge, but still, you just dip your interest for a second, you're doing something else, and it's gonna punish you, and I really like that. Second to worst boss, though, Varimathras. What the hell is this supposed to be? Do we still need a patchwork boss? Why? Who cares? Who isn't doing max DPS anymore? Not only that, they need to fix the tanking thing on heroic. It's absolutely stupidity. Other than that, there's nothing much to say about this fight. It's just DPS. You won. Great. Move every now and again. Like, very slightly move. The tanking thing, though, is clearly frustrating for the tanks too. Once they figure it out, it's fine, but it's still not fun or interesting. Having to sort of sidle yourself into a boss model, but not be slightly in front, but be slightly out, and then maneuver yourself to try and just not move at all. It's like, ugh. It's all about the tanks in that fight, but why there's a patchwork fight at this day and age, I don't know. Apparently we need it. People love their patchwork style fights. They like these big blocks of health they can just pummel into. Enjoy. Covenant of Shivara, though, great fun. Loved this. Really liked it. This is, again, why I was saying that the latter half of Antorus is much, much better than the beginning. The Covenant of Shivara was fantastic. Loved all the tank swaps that needed to go on with different sort of abilities going down. how to mix and match them, how to counter them, how to move around what is a very cool room. I also want to point out here, I actually love the setup that you're on the floor that looks like you're going to the Coven of Shivara, and they have that big hole that drops you into Varimathras' pit. Love that. That's a very clever map design choice there. It's like, oh, because I know people, I didn't fall for it particularly, but I know people who I played with did fall for it. They thought, oh, we're going to the Coven, and they fell down the hole that they didn't see. Boom, Varimathras is right there. I think some people will be disappointed lore-wise that this is what Varimathras turned into, which was the patchwork fight. I think they could have swapped that around and used Varimathras in a different way. But the Coven of Shivara was fantastic. A little bit visual details. This is the second boss in this expansion that it has been better to turn down details. Certainly on the heroic version where you're dealing with the safe zones, turning your graphics down to cope with mechanics is bad. That shouldn't be what the game does. They should come up with a better system than making it easier by turning like particle density down and things like that. I mean, that's something we used to do in vanilla to get around mechanics. Like you could get rid of the drunken haze in Zul'Gurub by turning off, I think it was projected textures or something like that. But there should never be a case where your visuals are so intense that turning them off is the best way to go about it. I don't think that's right. But other than that, I mean, that's a minor complaint. It's nothing we haven't used like on Kill Jaden himself. So the Coven of Shivara liked that. As I liked Agramar. Really enjoyed Agramar. Surprisingly, for what is a relatively simple fight on normal, haven't killed this on heroic. Haven't killed Coven yet. We got Coven to like 20%. We had a couple of pulls. Haven't done Agramar. So for this stuff on, I haven't done on heroic yet. We'll do them tomorrow. But Agramar, really enjoyed this, actually. It was good as a tank, because obviously I've killed this on normal. As a tank, making sure we had the little tank dance correct and all that, kept me engaged throughout the entire fight. I can't speak from a DPS or healer point of view. I imagine it's not that interesting because it involves just kind of like standing out, move in, move out, and that was about it on normal. What it's like on heroic, I can't say. But as a tank, really enjoyed Agramar because it wasn't frustrating like Varimathras. It was interesting because it was nice to get back to position, spin him around, spin him back around again, and do all that. And then on to the grand finale, which was Argus the Unmaker. One spectacular room. I mentioned it earlier. Good God. Good God. And visually, oh, Blizz. The black on blue, yeah, dude. That's my jam. That is my jam. That room is creamy good. It very well is. Now, let's talk about the fight itself, at least on the normal mode. I might have more perspective for you when I do a heroic. If I think it's worthy of a video, I'll make one. But I should be killing him on heroic tomorrow. Argus the Unmaker. Where do we start? First of all, getting over the visuals and little edgy names there, Code of Death, and he's going to destroy everything in the universe. I believe one of his abilities actually says in the Dungeon Journal that he's casting the end of all things. If you've not seen this in your Dungeon Journal, it's stage 4, and it just says, Argus ends creation, killing everything. Well, there you go. That's the end of that. But it's a wonderful fight. I love that they brought back this is kind of spoiler territory, but if you're watching this at this point, you're probably aware that they brought back the kill the whole raid and then the Titans intervene on your behalf. Really liked that because one, I didn't know it was going to happen, which, as you can imagine, was a big shock to me when he wiped out the whole raid. That was kind of fun. And then coming back to life and then utilizing death. Very cool, utilizing death. Traditionally, they send us off to some sort of shadow realm or the ghosty realm or something along those lines. But the utilizing death and having people die and come back to life over and over again and providing this almost like a buffer zone in some ways. I'm sure on Mythic and maybe even Heroic, it's not quite like that. But generally speaking, very excited by this boss, and also what I hope for this boss is, if you're not aware of this, the guys who are dead and the ghosts, they actually deal with mechanics that buff the raid, and they've hilariously called it Titan Forging. Nice little nod there from Blizz. They've created a buff that's called Titan Forging. Ha 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 ha. Very, very funny. Is that they don't that the mechanic isn't just to have a couple of people just running around downstairs Pac-Man style, because that's what it is. They run around downstairs collecting little buffs that allow I think it's Aman'Thul to Titan Forge. Khaz'goroth. Khaz'goroth gets to Titan Forge the players who are alive and give them damage buffs and things. So I hope it doesn't get reduced to that, but we'll wait and see. I will say, though, from the normal perspective, I couldn't tell visually, and Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'll leave that to you to decide. But visually, could not tell what the hell was going on in the last phase. Like, looking at the mechanics, looking what was going on, had no idea. Had absolutely no idea what was supposed to be happening. It was just utter chaos. And I know some people like that, where it's like, this is just utter madness, and I love it. And I was looking everywhere, but there was nothing I could say other than, I don't know what's going on here. I'm just tanking the boss. Things are happening all over the room. It's splashing. It's like a fireworks display. It's utterly incredible to see. I don't know what's happening, though. I'm just going to avoid things, and hopefully people kill the boss, which they did. Reading through it, though, I do understand what is happening now, but good God, is that a manic last phase. Definitely looking forward to what the mythic version looks like. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. But that is my roundup. I kind of want to mention again, the RP afterwards, Blizzard did such an astounding job there. An absolutely astounding job. And very, very cool. Very, very cool. So I look forward to bringing you a bit more of this once I know exactly what is happening. That's what I'm hoping to see. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.